Are you looking for more out of your life? Do you need ideas on how to start new businesses and how to move forward in your own personal life? Well, guess what? You have come to the right radio show. At You Can Overcome Anything podcast show, you will learn and hear from many people from all walks of life who are sharing their challenges, their stories, the habits, and the mind shifts they had to overcome to become who they are today. On top, you will get a chance to connect and see how you can overcome anything by networking and learning about your next move through this radio show. I present to you our great speakers at You Can Overcome Anything podcast show with your host, Cesar Espino. Hey, welcome back. It is your friend Cesar Espino. Welcome back to this new episode of You Can Overcome Anything podcast show. And today I have a very special guest, and I actually want to introduce you and give you some feedback. It is my good friend, Steve Rozenberg. And first, how are you, Steve? How's everything?
I'm doing good, man. Thanks for having me on today, Cesar.
Awesome, no problem. So let me give you a little bit about Steve and his background. So Steve Rozenberg is the Vice President of Education for Mynd Property Management. In this role, he educates individuals about benefits of small residential investing and various events, investors meetup groups, and much more. He co-hosts a real estate investing podcast called the Myndful Investor with Mynd's Chief Growth Officer, Alex Osenenko. I want to make sure I got it right.
Osenenko, yeah, it's a tough
Osenenko,
one.
Yeah, there you go. And the first season of Myndful Investor just debuted in mid-December. And by the way, if you have not listened to that, you need to listen to that. A lot of great content. Like for me, being a real estate investor is really, really good. So anyways, Steve, you definitely can give us more about, who you are. But I mean, man, there's a lot of questions that I have for you and a lot of great things that you're doing now, right? So why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about who you are and where you came from and, let them know about you.
Sure. Yeah. So, as you said, so it's Mynd. It's M-Y-N-D, Mynd Property Management.
Got it. Awesome.
I'm very, very, very honored to be on your show. Like you, I grew up in Los Angeles, so I was born and raised in LA. I had a normal childhood growing up, grew up in East LA, actually, went to East LA college. And, I can't say that I didn't come from money. I didn't come from being poor. I was just middle of the road,
Right.
And while I was growing up in LA, I wanted to learn about being an airline pilot. And so I did everything I had to do. I studied, I did all the classes. I went to Cal State Los Angeles and I got my flying degree and my certificates and flew out of Burbank Airport and ended up getting a job with an airline. And I was about 25 when I got hired with Continental Airlines. And I went out to Guam, flew out in the South Pacific. And that was all I ever wanted to do. I just wanted to be an airline pilot. Didn't want to do anything else. I was very, very happy because I had studied my whole life to do that. That was my focus. That was my goal. I achieved that. And I thought I was very secure. And in my mind, I thought I had the safest, most secure job that I could ever have. And I was the happiest person in the world up until September 10th, 2001.
Yeah.
September 11th happened, which we all know was the tragedies of 9/11. And on September 13th, I found that my safe, secure job was not very safe and secure. And I was delivered a furlough notice from the company saying that basically we are possibly going to be downsizing. We're going to be basically wiping out contracts and pensions. Wow. And we're going to do whatever we need to do to protect shareholders and stock prices, which is their job. That's what they're supposed to do. But what I realized was I am not very safe and secure, and I'm very expendable, number one. And it got worse because what I realized is when I was so specialized to be an airline pilot, and that's all I could do, it's a very narrow field. And when I started looking to see what other jobs I could do, I wasn't qualified to do anything else. I was only qualified to fly an airplane. So I couldn't even get a job driving a truck. So all of a sudden I realized wow, this actually is a pretty bad situation I'm in because I can't do anything else. And you realize how vulnerable you are when you're working for a company and you're a cog in a wheel. And, you know, it was a great job. And luckily I never lost my job. I came within 30 from the bottom of losing my
Wow.
job of a 6,000 pilot seniority list.
Oh,
So I was grateful that I never lost my job. But what I realized, and hopefully some of these people realize as well watching, or hopefully they never get to where I was, but you realize that if you're relying upon someone else for your livelihood, destiny, everything else, you're at their will. And so I realized that I needed to do something else. I never wanted to quit flying, but I also knew that I had to do something else just in case there was another, you know, God forbid, another attack. If there was another downturn, if just anything happened, the merger, anything, I could be out of a job. And now, you know, you got bills in your life.
right.
So I didn't know what else existed. So I started reading and learning, and everything was tied to real estate. And so I just started realizing, like, wow, all these people make money, or somehow they're tied to wealth via real estate at some level. So I thought, well, I know a lot of pilots that do this and they make money doing this, so maybe I'll learn. So I started going down the path of learning real estate, and I was, you know, and I don't know how you got into real estate, Cesar. Well, I do know because I read your book, but
Yeah.
you know, the way I got into it was all of a sudden it was like this new society had opened up that I knew nothing about, and people are talking about cash on cash return and ROI and all these things, and I'm like, where did this exist? I've never even heard of these things, and I felt like I was kind of behind the curve. So now I'm about 30 years old now, and or 29, and I'm reading a book a week just to try to understand this whole new information. I ended up signing up for some courses and some mentoring, which I know you and I both are very big into self-development. And I learned how to wholesale properties and learned how to do option contracts and double closings and stuff like that. And I also learned how to negotiate. And because I realized that I'm not very good at swinging a hammer, so I got to be able to talk my way out of anything, because I'm not going to be doing construction.
Yeah.
And so I got really good at negotiating, got really good at wholesaling, option contracts with properties, and did very well at it for a couple years. So well that I joined a local investment club in Houston and ended up going into partnerships on an apartment complex.
Got it.
And that's when I started getting into the passive income side of it. Sold the apartment complex after a couple years and started buying some single family homes with my business partner. That to this day, we are still business partners till we recently sold our business. But we had some single family houses. We bought quite a few of them very quickly and made a lot of mistakes. Just got schooled up one street and down the other. You know, we thought we owned an apartment complex. We're pretty smart, you know, and I could tell you that is not the case. And we learned a lot of lessons, lost a lot of money. But because of that, we formed a management company to manage our own properties, mainly because nobody would manage them for us because they were so horrible. No company would take them because they're these low-end properties that nobody wanted to deal with.
Wow.
But what we ended up doing is we took all those failures and we turned those into lessons that we created a company with. And that company, we ended up getting a business coach. And we took that company within 7 years, built it up to about 1,000 properties that we are managing. We are all over. We're in 3 locations. So we learned how to build and scale a business. I was still working full-time as an airline pilot because, like I said, I love doing it. My business partner, for about half the time, he was working and running an IT department for a large company. And then he ended up leaving and forming the company. And the coaching really is what defined our success. I'll tell you that. But we learned all about business, all about acquisitions, all the different roles and all that stuff. Scaled up our business, and recently, within the last 6 months, we sold our company and merged with Mynd Property Management. They're out of Oakland, and then they brought us on strategically to be. I'm the brand ambassador, if you will, of Mynd. My business partner Pete, he's running the Texas division for them, and they manage about 10,000 properties.
Wow!
And so they give me the ability to do what I love doing, which is out there speaking, podcast shows, doing presentations, things like this. So I've had a pretty wild ride that I never ever asked for. I never wanted, but I'm glad I did because I really enjoy doing this now. And you know, you and I have talked a lot about this. I love speaking. I love educating. And it's it's been a very wild education to see why businesses fail, why people that start out don't succeed, why some do succeed. And I feel like I got a master's degree or a PhD in failures, but also in understanding mentally why some people succeed and why some people don't, and what those triggers are in their brain. And so it's very intriguing to me because I was there, I was on that path, not knowing what to do. And I realized there's a lot of people out there having these same challenges like I had, that are thrust into a situation, whether you want to or not. You're put in a position, in a situation that you have to basically, fight or flight, and so that's kind of, in a nutshell, that is my story.
Yeah, wow, that's amazing. I mean, there's so many different lessons just based on what you just mentioned. There's so many different things that one, I have questions. Number two, there's a lot of key points that you talked about, right? So I want to take it back for a little bit.
Sure.
So right before you realize that, I don't have a secure job, because a lot of us are, a lot of the people that are listening, they might be working that 9 to 5, or they might be, in that position where they have a good job, maybe way over 6 figures, or whatever the case may be, right? And so for you, I know me growing up, one of the things that I wanted to do is I wanted to be a pilot at one point. I mean, that's kind of like a dream job too. It's a really good job. You get to travel all over the place and do all these different things, right? And so, to be able to say, this is not secure. I know that it was the event that took place, the 9/11 and all that stuff. But what happened inside of you, inside of your mind or your heart, that said, yeah, this is a good job and I love it. I got to think about something beyond this. What was that trigger? Like, there has to be something that was a pivotal moment for you, right?
Yeah, like I said, it just kind of formed. It was, it's like all of a sudden, all this stuff just kind of came into focus. And I started reading, I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad and all these other books. And I just started looking at it from the other side. Like, if I owned a business, I would do the same thing. So I don't hate the company for doing this. I understand why they do this. I still fly, I fly 787 for United Airlines, and I do Houston to Sydney, Australia. That's the route I do.
Yeah.
And what I realize now is I love the job because I'm not dependent upon the job.
Right.
I don't have to sit there I call it the Guns N' Roses theory, right? Guns N' Roses was making millions of dollars and they split up, right? They hated it so much. They hated each other. They split up for years, right? I fly with pilots. We have the best job. And I tell people I have the best part-time job in the world. I fly around the world and they pay me to do this. And I go to Australia for 3 days.
Yeah.
And people still bitch, right? You get people are bitching about this. Oh, did you hear the union? And I'm so removed because I'm doing other things. I'm like, I don't hear anything. So I can really enjoy going to work and flying the plane and doing that. And then I can mind my own business, as the term goes. And I'm not relying upon one or the other. So I'm very fortunate to be able to have that. I mean, I couldn't have planned that if I tried. I'm not that smart of a guy, but I think I took action when I realized I needed to without even knowing, I mean, I'm a very action oriented person. I get stuff done, and I saw this opportunity, and it really wasn't even an option for me. When your back's against the wall, it's, you're going to have to do what you have to do. And that's what I did. I was like, you do it out of fear. And it's like that. I love, Tony Robbins says, I've heard him say it. I don't know if he's the one who said it, but people do what they must, not what they should. Right. And it's like, well, I shouldn't invest in real estate. I should do these other things. Right. Well, when you lose your job and you have to do something, all of a sudden that becomes a priority. And again, I did not plan it, but all of a sudden I was thrust into this situation that I thought, guys around me were dropping like flies, losing their jobs. They furloughed 1,200 guys. Man, I got to within 30. I mean, it was like,
very close. Yeah.
Very close. So you realize it was real. And it was like, man, if anything else happened, I'm done. Like, I'm done.
Yeah. And like you said, you didn't have that fallback plan, right? I mean, at that point, it was, you were just that pilot. That's all you knew, right? And now the beauty of it seems like this is becoming more of it's kind of like a hobby, right? You enjoy a hobby, you do it so much, you don't even see it as work. I'm sure you don't, although you enjoy it, it's just a hobby, and you're not relying on that, which is the way where you need to be able to get to, right? Which is pretty awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And, you and I both have been, trained by our friend Marshall Silver. And,
Yeah.
the stuff that he taught me from being trained of what goes on in your mind. And it always just intrigued me. He's such an intelligent guy,
Right.
and just listening to him and really thinking about how the brain works, and why people do what they do, and why we say what we say, and the words that come out of our mouth. And it's a very interesting, way to look at life, that we go through life sometimes with blinders on and more fear. I mean,
Yeah.
we think that a paycheck is secure, but the reality is it's actually the most unsecure. I mean, I tell
Right.
people, I'm like, you're trading your time for money. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with
Right.
having a job. I have a job, and that's fine. But just understand that you are at the will of someone else. And if they
Right.
decide that they can replace you, outsource you, downsize you, they will do it for the good of their company. And you
Right.
have to be okay with that.
Right. And so and that's the good thing that I like about you, and I've done that in multiple aspects, is that if you want to have that job and you want to trade in the time for money, that's fine. I tell people, make sure that, one, that's a hobby. Number two, make sure that you continue to work on yourself more than you do on anybody else, and you've done that by building your empire. And we'll talk about this in a second. You also have a book, which is pretty awesome, and it's a good book. So again, you create different aspects that if you lose your job, you have other avenues to fall back on. A lot of people, though, unfortunately, they just have that one job, right? And they forget to work on themselves, or they forget to work on some sort of dream, whatever that might be, right, for them. And so it's always good to have that the multiple, I call it the multiple streams of income, right?
Sure.
And as a matter of fact, Richard Kawasaki talks about on his book too.
Yeah. It's very important we have this perception that as soon as we get out of school and get a job, we're done.
Yeah.
And it's like, I've learned over years of being trained and mentored, it's like we're a tree or water, it's like you're growing or dying. You never stay the same. So you are never going to be, what got you to this point in life is not going to get you here. And there's nothing wrong with being here, but you're never here. You're either going up or down. And that's what people don't realize. And it's like all of a sudden, the people you hang around with, the people you talk to, and all of a sudden what happens is a lot of people want to know, like, what is it you do, Steve? Like, how do you do this? And I tell them, it's nothing magic. It's consistency. I get up at the same time every day. I get up at 4 a.m. I go to the gym. I'm very consistent. It's very boring, but I am people are like, man, you're everywhere, this and that. I'm like, it's not that I'm everywhere. I'm just consistent in what I do.
Right.
And, I tell people, I'm like, you can do it. You choose not to. Every morning we wake up, we have a choice. Yeah. Am I going to be lazy and do nothing, or am I going to do something and be proactive? You have a choice, right? And so I created a business. Me and my business partner, we created a business. We scaled it very, very large. We ended up selling that business. So we understood how to take a business from zero and build it up and sell it, right? While I still had a job. So it's like, I tell people, I'm like, don't tell me you can't do it, because I did it. You choose not to do it. You make choices every single day, which is okay, but don't mask it saying I could never do that. It's like, you don't want to do it is the reality.
Right, which is the difference, right? And so, and a lot of that has to do with you're creating those habits, right? Tony Robbins talks about rituals. You're creating rituals for yourself. And so I would assume that for you, a lot of that is it the mindset? Is it the fact that you were once in a place where, like, I don't want to go back to, I don't want to feel that. Like, there's always that drive, right? And so for you, I'm assuming it's a lot of that, it's that like you said, you're growing. I don't want to be the same place. I want to become that, better, right?
Yeah. I think it's that. And also, look, like I've been around a lot of very successful people. And they have the same problems. They may get into an argument with their wife or their spouse or whatever the case may be, and they have a bad day, and they get bad meals. They get sick. I mean, they're just like us, right? They're everything.
Right.
But they do something different. And I think to myself, when I see what they do, I'm like, number one, they don't work harder than me. So we think working hard is tied to success, which it's not, right? Yeah. So what is it they do? It's like they think differently. And I sit there and I see it. And I'm like, you know what? I could do what they do. So to me, the passion that drives me, as you can probably tell, is like, I know I can do it, because I sit there and go, it's like a puzzle to me, right? And I'm sitting there looking at this going, this can be done. I can do this. I just have to figure out these pieces. And I enjoy doing it because I sit there and I look at other people and, they're not the smartest. They're not the dumbest. They're not the best in shape. They're not, they're all these things. They're not, but they are something. They're a certain breed. And the breed that I've noticed is they're very consistent and they're very, very protective of their time. And whenever they do something, they have focus and commitment in what they do, and they don't deviate from that once they make that plan. I mean, look, Marshall, right? You talk to Marshall, man, and when he zones in on something like that, his eyes are just going through you, and you're like, he is ready to go on this thing. It's just that focus is so intent, and it's something that I really, really want to learn because it could be the difference. People say, "Oh, money doesn't make me happy," all that stuff. I get it, but though. I'd be a lot happier with a lot of money than a lot of poor people would with none.
Right.
And the reality is I would like the option to do what I want to do. Right. I mean, like I said, I could quit flying my airplanes right now. I could quit the airlines and I could just do what I do with the other careers and I'd be fine, or vice versa. But I don't do it for the money. You don't do it for the money. It's not the money that drives us. It's something inside of us.
Right.
And I'm sure a lot of people watching this show probably think to themselves, like, how do I do that? How do I get there? How do I make that step?
Right.
And the reality is it's just take a step. It's like, you don't need to take a jump. You don't need it. It's not a leap. It's just one step. It's like one thing in the right direction, whether it's writing down your goals every day, whether it's getting up for the gym. It's one day after the other. And next thing you know, you have a pattern, and then your beliefs and your thoughts change. And all of a sudden things just start changing.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. And so, one thing that I'm curious to know, why real estate? Obviously, you had other options, right? You could have done stocks, you could have done online, selling online. I mean, there were so many different things you could have done, right? So, what was the one thing that brought you to real estate? And then there's different strategies, and I want to talk about the strategy that you decided to do. So, yeah.
Yeah. So, the reason I picked real estate is I thought it synergistically worked with my career.
Okay.
The illusion that I was told is that this is passive income, right? Yeah. You buy a rental property, or you deal with a rental property, and you're on the beach drinking a Corona and you're hanging out. And the mailbox money's coming in, right?
Right.
That's not exactly true, but that's the philosophy that I had. And I thought to myself, okay, I can buy rental properties, right? Do okay as an airline pilot. I've got extra cash. I can buy a rental property, and I can also use that. It'll work synergistically with the airline job that I had. And so that was kind of why, because I was like, I knew people that did stocks, and that wasn't really my thing. And, I had come off, don't forget, this is 2001. So there was the .com bubble that burst in 2000.
That's true.
And everything was gone. So I was like, man, stocks just didn't bring it to me. And I was like, okay, you could start a business, but I'm like, okay, that's another job. Like, do I really want another job? And what am I going to do? I'm going to open a gym, or I'm going to open a sandwich place, or now I'm in the, you know what I mean? So I wasn't really talented in anything, because all I knew was to fly planes, And so that's why I chose real estate. It was kind of like, when I looked at people that were able to, I learned the word leverage, and I really learned that definition. I remember reading it over and over again. And when I was learning to do this, just to give you an idea, there was no YouTube, right? I mean, this 2001, 2002 is old. It sounds old now, right? I was going to the library. Like, I'd have a library card. I was going to the library, and I was, checking out books, and I was reading them, and I was looking up. I remember keeping on a dictionary with me, and I would look up definitions all the time, because I didn't understand. Like, I think one of the challenges we have, and I think you're going to this, is the difference between goals and strategies. And I think a lot of us do not understand the difference between the two. Right. And I think that was going to your next question, and we can talk about it, but ask me your question. I'll see if that ties in.
Well, yeah. So what I was going to say, so real estate is one. And then obviously real estate is very broad. There's so many different goals and strategies. You can do definitely different things, whether you're wholesaling, you're flipping, you're buying and holding, and all that stuff. Right. And to me, I see there in two different aspects. Number one, they all can work. Does that strategy tie into your ultimate goal? What is the end goal in mind, right? And so for you, what was that end goal in mind, and why decided to do, rental properties versus maybe some of the other things that you can find?
Sure. That's a great question. When I first started, I didn't know anything about goals and strategies. No idea. I'm a ready, shoot, aim kind of person, right? And that was a huge mistake. And I realized that was almost my downfall of not having a goal. And so I realized that as I started doing this more and more, I thought the goal, right? Me and my business partner, we sold the apartment complex and we were going to buy 50 houses. And that was the goal, 50 houses.
Mm.
What I realized is that's actually not a goal,
Mm.
right? That's a strategy. So
Right.
what I had to learn for myself, and I don't know how you learned this, but the way I kind of evolved into learning it is that, like, when you own a piece of property, when you own a rental property, that is a strategy, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you flip properties, that is a strategy.
Right.
When you rehab, that's a strategy. Owning stocks is a strategy. These are all strategies, right?
Mm-hmm.
These are like freeways to take you to a destination. So for example, let's say our destination in life is Disneyland.
Mm-hmm.
That's where we're going. We're going to Disneyland. What freeways are we going to take to get to Disneyland? Well, we're going to take the 5 to the 405 to the 91 to Beach Boulevard, get off in the street. These are all different strategies, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of us think the misconception is I'm going to buy a house.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's like you telling me, hey, Steve, I'm going to get on the freeway.
Yeah, right. True.
And I'm going to go, Cesar, where are you going? And you're going to be like, I don't know. I'm just going to get on the freeway and drive.
Yeah.
The problem is that's what I did. I got on the freeway and just started driving, and nobody ever asked me, hey, Steve, where are you going? And I was just buying houses and buying houses. First of all, they were the wrong houses because they were low income houses. Yes, on paper, they were high cash flow, but the reality was they weren't, because very high tenant turnover and make ready costs were very high because of the tenants taking parting gifts when they left, like wiring and electrical. And you read it in my book and stuff. But what I realized is that strategy worked, just not for me, because that was taking me to a different destination. I wanted a passive income property that was going to go up in value, that was not as time consuming. Mm-hmm. That is the complete opposite of the properties I bought. Yeah. And if somebody would have asked me, hey, Steve, why are you doing this? Where's your end? And I would have said, I want these properties to go up in value, and I don't want to mess with them. I want them to run on autopilot, this and that. And they would have said, these properties are not going to go up in value. Yeah. They're going to be always a lot of work. Yes, you can make cash flow, but the appreciation is not going to be there. Yeah. I would have maybe thought about it before I bought 35 of them and almost went bankrupt trying to figure out how to solve the problems. And I would have realized that lesson. So I thought that was the goal. That wasn't the goal. That was the strategy. And so, for people watching this, I would really, really challenge you to, when you're thinking of doing something, if you ask someone directions, what's the first thing you're going to ask? Where are you going?
Where are you going?
Right. And in real estate, we don't do that. We just, somebody will come to me and they'll go, hey, Steve, is this a good deal? Right. They put this paper in my face and they're like, is that a good deal? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know where you're going. Like, that's like saying, hey, is the 405 a good freeway? I'm like, yeah, it's a good freeway if you're going in that direction. If you're not, it's probably not a good way for you to go, And I'm like, and if they go, well, I don't know where I'm going, I'm just going to get in and drive. It's like, well, you could be going in the wrong direction in traffic in the wrong car. Right. So that's how I've learned that strategies and goals are so vital, because, to me, true wealth is built over time, right? And it's built by building assets that start providing for you. And what I have learned is that, and from being coached for all the years, is that when you have the definition of a business is a commercial profitable enterprise that runs without you. Mm-hmm. So if you cannot step away from your business and have it run without you, it's not a business, it's a job. Right? Yep. There's nothing wrong with having a job, but again, it's important to understand the strategy. That's the definition of that is not a business, that is a job. Now, how do you turn it into a business? You learn how to systematize, you learn how to automate, you learn how to leverage, you learn how to pull yourself out of it so that it can run without you, because a true business needs to have a sale date attached to it. Mm-hmm. Not saying you have to sell it, but it's got to have a date for you to be able to exit or be able to exit, because when you can sell your business as a business model, that means it's running without you completely and you can walk away from it. Not saying you have to, but that's how you know. So when I talk to people and I say, oh, what business you're in? And they're saying, oh, I flip properties. I'm like, oh, how many staff do you have? And they're like, nothing, just me and my buddy. I'm like, so what happens if you get hit by a bus tomorrow? Right. They're like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, how does it keep running? They're like, it doesn't. I'm like, then you don't have a business, you have a job. Yeah. Like make it, and there's and again, nothing wrong with that, but make sure you understand what that means, you know, and you should always be looking at your business model and saying, okay, how can I systematize this? What can I offload? What can I offset? And I got really good with our business. You know, we had over 1,000 properties. We outsourced 60% of our business was outsourced to contract workers in Mexico. You know, so to do that with virtual assistants, you really have to understand right person, right seat, who's doing what. Everything has to be documented. I mean, you've got to know exactly what you're doing. But what did that mean? That meant that I could travel around and I could speak and do stuff, and the business kept running and it kept growing without me because we did so much work. And I think the reason a lot of people don't like to hand things off is, you know,
like they like the control. They want that control.
Yeah, they like the control. And I think what happens is when all of a sudden, let's say Cesar, let's say you get an employee and you're like, hey, go ahead and, you know, find that deal and write up a contract and get it locked up. And all of a sudden he's like, I don't even know like where the paperwork is. I don't know where the contracts are. I don't know, you know, is there an app? And you're like, you know what, never mind. I'll just do it. No one can do it as good as me. But what it does is it's shining a light on a weakness in your business. And it's making you realize that is a weakness that you need to work on. And you need to go, okay, it's okay if it's a weakness. Now you got to say, how do I fix it? And how do I automate it? And what is the best use of your time, Cesar? Is the best use of your time driving around, or is the best use of your time signing contracts and getting deals?
Right. No. Yeah. And those are the questions you got to be able to ask yourself. Right. And our mentor Marshall talks a lot about that. Is like, what is the best use of your time? And, you know, he would say, if you want to be a millionaire, make sure that you're not doing anything that's below that pay grade, right? Get somebody else to do it, you know, leverage, which is critical. And, you know, you tapped into something that I was going to ask you, which is, you know, going through your journey and building this company, you mentioned you had a lot and many failures, yet those failures helped you become, you know, what you ended up building. And then on top of that, you systemize, which you ended up getting the VAs, and then you decided to actually open up your own VA company. So I want to know more about that. Why was that, you know, the idea? Yeah.
So one thing I learned and again, I tell people, I'm like, I'm an airline pilot. They don't teach you how to speak. I mean, I've talked on, you know, I did a tour through Australia speaking, talked in front of thousands of people. They don't teach you that in pilot school. So I had to learn that skill, right? I had to learn that craft, and you know, Marshall helped me with that and some other coaches. And we had to learn business. So we had a business coach, right? And what we realized with business is our job as leaders of the business is to find the challenges and the choke points in the business and fix them so that the team can do what they do. Like our job is not to do, our job is to think and see and look ahead. And the challenge is when your first business, they always say is the hardest. And I can definitely relate to that because you don't know what's coming around the corner. So for example, when we were managing 100 properties, right? You had certain issues, certain challenges. Well, that's different at 400 properties, which is different at 600, which is different at 1,000. So just something simple that you wouldn't think about. Let's say, for example, you have vacant properties, right? And let's say that we had we'll just use easy math and say we had a 10% vacancy. So that meant every month we had about 10, you know, we had at 100 properties, we had 10 properties, right? And people call on those properties and they want to lease those properties, and there's systems set up for that, right? And so how do people find out? Well, they make the phone call, right? Right. Well, now let's say we have 1,000 properties. 10% of that is 100 properties every month. Now we have 100 properties vacant. We were getting 1,000 phone calls a month into our office. Wow. And we're like, what the F is going on here? Like our owners and everyone else couldn't call in because our phone was clogged from renters wanting to rent the properties. Now all of a sudden we're like, this wasn't a problem before. Well, it wasn't a problem before because we didn't know it was becoming a problem. Right. Now, so, you know, it's things that are coming around the corner that we've never been on this road before, right? So we don't know the next turn. Yeah. And so when it happens, you've got to be able to look at it, and you've got to be able to pivot and change things and be okay with changing it for the good. And also, the faster you grow, the faster your systems and your people will break. That's just business. You don't want to, our coach used to tell us, you know, we're growing exponentially fast in our company. Yep. And he says, and we're like, man, you know, there's tension with the clients, there's tension with the staff, there's that. And he would say, you want to stop all that? And we're like, yeah. He goes, stop growing, give them the norm. And we're like, well, we don't want to do that. And he said, well, then you got to be okay with it. Like, that's just business. Like, you have to be okay. You do everything you can. You create systems and structure in place. You know, you systematize 80%, you humanize 20%. And you just keep going with it. And you cannot stop. Like once that train starts leaving the station, man, it's our job to be ahead of it, to be looking down the tracks to see what's coming. And that's our responsibility. And again, I tell people, you are going to fail. You are going to piss people off. All these things are going to happen when you own a business, and that's okay. But are you learning the lesson from it? And are you sitting there going, okay, did that once, probably won't do that again, whether it's a bad hire or whether it's shouldn't have done this, whatever it is, you take it, you look at it and say, okay, and it's always hard to do, right? You get ripped off by someone. It's very hard to go, hey, what was the lesson I learned here? Well, the lesson may be only do business with reputable people, whatever the case may be. Were there some red flags? And a lot of times there are a lot of red flags that lead up to failure. And, it's very similar to, I'll use an example in the airline industry. In the airline industry, whenever there's a plane crash, whenever something crashes, they will come back and they will do an investigation. And then a lot of times we can, as pilots in ground school, they'll break that investigation down and basically be able to slice up the steps that led to the crash. Let me ask you this. How many steps would you guess on average lead to a crash?
Probably 5 to 10.
8.
Okay.
It's 8 or 13. I forget. But my point is like, it could be like, okay, maybe they didn't get a lot of sleep the night before, the pilots. Maybe they weren't really getting along, right, in the cockpit. Maybe they weren't talking very well. Maybe they missed a radio call. Maybe one said one thing, one said something. So it's not the crash. The crash kills them, but it's not the crash. There's a lot of red flags that pop up along the way that led to the crash. Same thing. If you're driving to work one day and you get an argument with your wife, right? Your kids are pissed at you. There's rainy. You're running late. You spill coffee on your lap. Now you're driving in traffic. You're text messaging, and then boom, you hit someone, right?
Right.
Well, it wasn't that you hit someone. It was all the things that led up to that.
Yeah.
And so, and again, it's easy when you're not in the heat of battle to sit there and say like, yeah, probably was a good lesson here. I get it. But normally if you can sit back, take a breath, think about it and go, okay, not today, but maybe tomorrow I'm going to sit there and I'm going to think and go, okay, what could I do? What could I have done differently? And that's the one thing that having a business coach really helped us, because every week we went into his office and whenever things would happen, he would be that third party that he wouldn't give us the answers, but he would ask us questions that really made us think a lot, and you'd walk out of there and you're like, oh man, I hate him today, but because he's challenging us, we'd come up with these great ideas, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And he would be like, is that part of the plan? And we're like, well, no. And he's like, if it's not part of the plan, you're not doing it, or change your plan. One or the other. You're not just going to go off on this thing. And we're like, yeah, but this could be a lot of money. He's like, but how much money are you not going to make because you're sidetracked on some stupid idea that you guys think is going to work?
Right.
And so it's tough, man. It's very tough because, as you know, there's no rule books in opening a business. There's no playbook. There's no one that says, hey, Cesar, you're going to do this. Here's your playbook. Good luck. This is everything you need to know in opening a business. Right. No, there's no one there that tells you that. And your playbook is different than someone else's, in the same business.
And even if you go to school and you get a bachelor's or a master's or whatever, I don't care what you do, there's nothing that tells you how to go about opening up a business. We actually get trained in school on how to become a good employee, right? Yep. That's what we're trained, unfortunately. Yep. And so, it's very difficult. And actually that leads to the next question I have for you. Man, you went through a lot. And in your book is great. You talk about it there. There was moments where like, I was even reading your book and I'm like, how the hell did you survive, right? You went through so many tribulations, but what got you going? What kept you going, man?
I think first of all, I'm a very driven person. I'm very competitive, but, I think it's the fear of what I had to do, of the sense that, I always remember that 9/11. And, and the one thing I remember as we were going through this, as your business grows, the train of people behind you and the responsibility grows, right? So all of a sudden, we had like 30 employees, from up here to Mexico. And all of a sudden I'm thinking like, man, we got, these people are relying on us. Like we have a responsibility to them to make sure that we do the best we can do to make sure, they've got families, it's like, I'm like, I don't need it. I could walk away, but I'm like, but these other people, they depend on us. And, the one thing I think sometimes as entrepreneurs, when we work for ourselves, we get very lazy and we get selfish. And look, when you are an entrepreneur and you are working on your own, there's no one looking over your shoulder saying like, hey, Cesar, you got some tasks. You better get them done today. You better get them done, right?
Right.
Well, sometimes people need that, right? Sometimes they need that accountability and they don't get that, which a lot of times is why people fail. And the one thing I would say is, when you own a business and you have a business partner, and we both were very much business, we always thought the business would come first. Like it was always the business is first before he and I. Whether that's the right way to do it or not, I don't know. But we always made sure that they got paid, that the vendors got paid, everybody was taken care of, and we would take what was left, which probably is not the best way, in hindsight to do it. But we just thought that's the right thing to do. We're like, what's the right thing to do? This is the right thing to do. And what I learned is when all of a sudden you start being accountable, we ended up bringing on a third partner who was the founder of the whole coaching franchise, good buddies with Marshall Silver level guy,
Okay.
And all of a sudden he's on our board and we're talking about nationally scaling our business, and we'd have board meetings with him. And it was like, we got 30 minutes, guys. I want to know what's going on. Wow. And so all of a sudden that accountability ratcheted up another notch, Right. So, and you'd be amazed at when you are accountable to someone, and what gets done. And I do a lot of, I travel the world speaking and stuff. And I do stuff with business owners. And one of the things I ask business owners, I'm like, who do you answer to? And they're like, no one, I own the business. I'm like, maybe that's the problem. Yeah. Maybe you should be fired because you are the problem. Right. Just because you don't have to answer to someone doesn't mean you're not responsible for other people.
Right. Yeah.
And so they kind of think about that. I'm like, I'm not trying to be mean or anything, but that's the reality. Like, you are the problem. Like, why is it that you think that you can be late to a meeting, but you don't want any of your staff to be late? You don't do all the things you're supposed to do, but you want your staff to do it. So it's like the fish stinks from the head down,
right.
And
yeah.
they're looking at you and they're going, well, he's not doing it. He comes in late. He's always doing this. He's doing that. Why should I?
Right.
And that's the example you're setting, and so again, it's just what I've learned. To answer your question, why did I keep driving? I don't know, man. I'm a grinder, man. That's just what I do.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And one thing that I like about that too is that I like the fact that you have to be accountable. I think a lot of people give up so easy or so fast because they're not seeing the results, right? At least in my journey, it's been very difficult. It's been very tough. Yet I'm glad I keep going even after I fail once or twice or three times. And as you know, obviously we're both very involved in self-development. And I always look at who is holding me accountable, who's going to tell me, hey, shake it up and freaking get up and do it again, right? And I think that's really good to have that kind of accountability coach, mentor, or a business partner that can help you with that through your journey, whatever it is that you're doing, right? So that's pretty awesome. Now, let's talk about your book. So why the book?
Well, it's funny. I thought I had an interesting story. I didn't know, but I thought I had a pretty interesting story.
It's pretty awesome.
Thanks. It's unique because I go into being an airline pilot, and I talk about growing up in Los Angeles and being a pilot, and then 9/11, and then kind of my world kind of turning. And I just thought, this is a good story for people to know because, again, I think there's a lot of people out there that probably fail and stop somewhere between where I was to where I am. I'm sure the highway of business is littered with dead bodies from what we got through, and I mean, I tell you what, in hindsight, I sit there and think, man, would I do it all again? Like, would I go through all that again? I think the answer is yes, but I think I'd be smarter about it this time, But at the time you're just surviving, you know what I mean? And I thought, man, this is a good story for people to really understand what it takes. I mean, just like your book, right? Growing up in Mexico and everything that you had to do, people want to know that because, again, as entrepreneurs and us starting it, we're very isolated. We're on an island. And especially when you own a business, I remember our business coach said, the problem with owning a business is you leave your job because your boss is a prick. The problem is the new boss is a prick and he's crazy, but it's you, Yeah. It's true, man. It's the most crazy. It's the most crazy business. And there's no one to tell you whether you're doing it right or wrong. I mean,
Yeah.
look, there's many times that you could stop and go, you know what, forget this. I'm just tired of not flipping deals and not finding stuff. LA is a very competitive market. I know growing up there, and, you're in there in the real estate. It's super tough. It's hyper sensitive there. And it's like, you could very easily, and my question to you is why do you do it? What drives you? And it's we all have that certain something in us. And I just thought, I think my story would be relatable to people. And that's kind of why I did it.
Right. Yeah. No, and it makes sense. And I think something very similar that we share is that passion. And you talked about what is your goal, right? I mean, and there's a lot of different strategies. To me, I have this highest intention, where do I want to be? Where do I want to go? And then with my book, with my real estate, with this show here, I want to, my highest intention is to be able to get to more people and reach them and help them in their own journey by being able to get them to the next level. Right? It's not so much about I'm gonna go out and flip a property or all this other stuff. All of that is good, but it's part of the bigger game plan for me, right? It's just a vehicle to get me to where I want to get to. And so for me, I continue to do that, right? I continue to move forward, and I continue to say, what can I do today that I can impact somebody positively to help them get to the next level in their journey, right? And it's like, part of it is like having people like you here that they can relate to that story. They can relate to someone that has done it and has the tools and the ideas that can share with the rest of the people to get to that level, right? So, that's pretty awesome. And then, I have a couple more questions for you. And, obviously I saw it on the news, I forget when, maybe about 6 months ago. So I saw it on the news, and you decided to sell your business. You and your business partner decided to sell the business. And that was huge for you guys. Yeah. What was the primary factor of you guys doing that? And then what is the next thing to come? So 2 questions. Why did you do it, and what's next for you?
Sure. We had not planned to sell the business this early. Our goal was to sell it eventually.
Okay.
We were looking at doing maybe a national roll-up or a franchise model, which is why we brought in our third partner, because we had some very good systems and we created a lot of good automation to scale our company. So selling it was not top of our radar. The challenge, though, is, when we were owning the business, is I wanted to continue to grow and expand as much as possible. And you reach a glass ceiling. You really do, and it's like, how do you punch through that glass ceiling? And it's like, we were having conversations like, oh, you guys are going to need to get $30 million to start, doing some marketing and this and that. And I'm like, how do I find someone with $30 million? Like, I don't even I'm like, I'll do it, but I don't where are they? Like, how, you know what I mean? I was getting into an atmosphere that I was not understanding or knowing. And when this company approached us, basically they were doing what we wanted to do. They have the financial backing, very, very competent people. I mean, they have their own software. They've got, a good amount of capital backing them. Everything we wanted to do, they were doing. And so we thought about it. I thought, okay, does it make sense to join them, or does it make sense to fight them? Because they're going to be in our market. And now we're going to be dealing with them. And the one thing that I liked about them is they're very much into the artificial intelligence technology side of it. And their philosophy, which I agree with, is they're like, just like Uber did to the taxis, just like Airbnb, just like Spotify, they're all of these, what I've learned, since I've sold and I've gotten to meet a lot of these people, is what the industries are turning to is anything that causes less friction between, seller and buyer. And anything that is less friction and causes less, rub interaction with the easy button. So, you pick up your phone, you say, I want to go somewhere, you hit a button, and boom, someone pops up, right? And Uber's there. You don't have to pay for it, nothing. It's all done on your credit card, right? As opposed to the taxi cab, right?
Right.
And then, you look at the radio, right? You go into different sections, different parts of town. You go from LA to Texas, you're going through radio stations, problems, XM radio, you got to pay. All of a sudden now Spotify comes on, boom. Pandora comes on, boom, right? Airbnb, boom. So they're thinking the same thing. This someone's going to boom and come up with technology that's going to make, I mean, think about it. When you think of owning a rental property and you think of a management company, the first thing that normally comes to my mind, and I owned a company, is I'm always thinking of this old lady with a cigarette hanging out of her mouth, coffee stains on my lease, the phones are ringing, she's not answering it, and you're like, what do you do all day, right? That's what I always think of, right?
Yeah.
That's the perception of a management company. But if you thought of it like an Uber, where all of a sudden it was just automated and there was technology and it was an app and things got done, all of a sudden you go, yeah, I mean, I don't know how, but I could see it being done. Same thing with Uber, right?
Yep.
And so that's kind of what they're looking at. And they're saying someone's going to do it because there's a lot of money coming into this industry because real estate is very solid.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just thought to myself, I thought, you know, our size, so you have the small mom and pops. When I say small mom and pops, maybe 100 to 200 properties managed. Mm-hmm. They're not going to affect them, right? They're like the small minnows. Right. They're not going to affect them. Then you have the big ones that are maybe like 2,000 properties and above. They're up to 10,000 properties. They will do some mergers and acquisitions. So who's going to get cut out? It's going to be us, the ones in the middle, the 1,000, the 1,500 property companies. We're going to get edged out. So we thought, okay, we will be in direct competition with them. Yeah. And so to answer your question, it was more of a tactical, you know, we liked what they did. We thought they were smart, or still do, you know, and so they also were very much of the sense of that they wanted to bring us in strategically because of our skill set, because of my ability to be an influencer in the investor world, being able to speak. And, you know, I do a lot of stuff on Bigger Pockets and all the other stuff. And so they want to harness that so that I'm a brand ambassador for the company, and be on the forefront of the knowledge educators. And my business partner, for all the systems and everything that he did, they're basically consuming those, and now they're picking them apart and trying to see, okay, how do we scale this to, because they manage 10,000 properties and they're growing exponentially. So they're like, how do we take this and 10x this stuff, you know? And so that's kind of why we do it. And that's kind of our roles now.
Got it. So what's next for you? I mean, what is the next move for you?
I don't know, man.
You're all over the place. You're flying, you're doing public speaking, you're writing books. Are you going to do another book, or what's going on?
You know, right now, I would say I'm taking it easy, but that's a lie. You know, I thought when I sold my company, I'd take it easy. Within like 30 days, I was full going. I'm really enjoying doing a lot of the speaking for Mynd. They really have given me a very large path and letting me go speak, which is what I love doing. I love speaking. I love educating people. I love just getting out there, podcast shows like this. So I'm going to just kind of run for a while.
Got it.
Sounds lazy, but I'm still an airline pilot. I'm still, you know, I got my real estate. I got all this stuff. So my goal right now is just to become, I really would like to put Mynd on the map as the #1 thought leader in real estate, and be able to be on the forefront of being that ambassador. And so that's my goal right now I would say for the next couple of years is really embrace that, because that's my zone. I feel very comfortable with, you know, doing like, you know, I have my podcast show, the Myndful Investor, and I'm looking at doing more things with Bigger Pockets as far as that goes, and more mindset stuff. Because I think that, you know, a lot of the people out there in real estate, they all show you how to get stuff, right? Like how do you get a deal? How do you flip a property? But there's nobody out there that actually says, what do you go through when the tenant moves in and 2 days later says, I lost my job and I'm not leaving? There's no shows. There's no one talking about that.
No, right.
And that's really how you create wealth, right? You don't, you know, you're going to create wealth with real estate over time, but nobody talks about that because it's not sexy. It's not fun.
Right.
So I want to bring a light to that and say, like, okay, like Cesar, before you bought your first rental property, what kind of things went through your mind, right? Because probably everyone else is thinking those things. And what do? We think of all the things that could go wrong because our brain is protecting us from doing something stupid. And the way it protects us, it tells us don't do it, right?
Right.
But when you went to deal 10, you think differently, much differently. Now you're looking at it, you're like, yep, numbers look good. Okay, let's lock it up. Let's go.
Yeah.
So my point of all that is, what was different, right? It's just how we thought, because it's still the same house. You could buy house 1, sell it, buy 10 more houses and come back to house 1 and probably would do things differently when you bought that house 1 again.
Yep.
And still 4 walls and a roof, right? Nothing of the structure changed, but how you run it is what changed, and how you think about it is what changed. So that's what I want to dig into. So I'm really
awesome.
going to get into thought leadership and really digging into that, because I think a lot of people struggle with that, and I think they can use some help in that world.
Yeah, no, and that's good. I mean, I one thing that I've seen too is that, yeah, like you talked about, a lot of people can teach you how to do this and that, and one thing they forget is about the mind. You know, you have to have the right mindset to be able to do any kind of business, and if you don't have the right mindset, then it doesn't matter how much I teach you, you're not going to be able to get through that hurdle when you're going through some difficult times. And one thing I like, I think you should do that is definitely, talk about the ugly, because that is what's going to make you even better person, investor, whatever the case may be. So that I love that, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, we don't learn from our successes. We learn from our failures.
Yeah, that's true. That is very, very true. So if you had my last question for you is, what is the one thing you can tell the listeners that they can do now to really overcome anything in their life, whether it's business, personal, whatever they're going through, right? What would be the one thing that you can give them as an advice that they can overcome anything?
I would say the one thing that you really that is vital is, before you get involved in anything, know your outcome. Know the end result and what you want out of it, and the outcome for you and the outcome for the other people. Even as simple as a meeting. You go into a meeting, one of the first things you should say, which I try to practice, is what is the outcome of this meeting? Like, what do you want? Yeah. And what do I want? And if we can hash that out in 2 minutes, let's do it in 2 minutes. Sure. If it takes us 3 hours, it takes us 3 hours, but I want to know where are we going. And so if you go into real estate or you go into a business, know the outcome of what you're looking for. Don't just aimlessly, puddle around in the lake and think you're making progress when you haven't gone anywhere, Yeah. And so I think by knowing your outcome, you can, a lot of times people mistake progress for movement. Mm-hmm. And they think just because they're busy, they're getting somewhere, but they're just going in circles. Where if you know the outcome, you're like, yeah, we're not getting there. I want to get there. And I think it just trains your brain to think about that. So I would say outcome, know your outcome.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, and then that's actually good. Two things to that. Oprah, she will go into any meeting, and that's the first thing she's asking.
Oh, really?
What are we trying to accomplish here? Yeah. Otherwise, let's not waste time. So where can people find you? If they want to work with you, what are some things that you can offer, the people or anything like that? And then where can people find you?
Sure. Yeah. So they can find me on Instagram, Rozenberg Steve. There you'll see a lot of stuff of me flying around the world, or me coaching, or I do like videos, education. Yep. They can also go to Facebook, Steven Rozenberg Professional. They can find me there. And I have a Facebook group. It's called the Mastermind, MYND, Mastermind Real Estate Investment Club. There, there's a lot of top level investors, people from Bigger Pockets, other places. And, we're things that are going on real life, right? And we comment and engage, and you're in there as well. Yep. It's just investors talking about what's going on. And it's kind of a live wire to the industry. So that's a good thing. So I would suggest you join the Mastermind Real Estate Investment Club. We also have the podcast show, The Myndful Investor. You can go to iTunes and subscribe. We have a new episode coming out every Friday. Awesome. And the thing I like about that show is we get both beginners as well as top level investors. And not only their successes, because look, everyone has their resume. I want to know, how did you fail? What did you fail at? And how did you overcome it? Because there's other people on the show, other people listening that want to know those answers. So that's really what I want to know about. I want to kind of dig into there. So yeah, they can find me on Instagram, Rozenberg Steve. They can go to my Facebook, Steven Rozenberg. They can go to our Facebook group, and they can go to the Myndful Investor. And if they want to reach out to me, I have a website, steverozenberg.com. So it's ROZENBERG. So, and I can give you the things if you want to do the links, but they can find me there. And if they want to talk to me, they can reach out to me. I'm very, very accessible to people. I get people hitting me up all the time, asking me questions about business or coaching. And it just depends on the situation. If I can help them, if I think I can help someone, I will. If I can't, then I'll tell them, I don't think I'm the person to help you. So it really depends on what they need from me.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And just something that came to mind, talking about your podcast show. If people are under, they're thinking, well, I'm too old, too young for any of this stuff. You had your son on the show, and again, and he had his first apartment. And so again, it doesn't matter the age, right? Yeah. I mean, you can definitely do it if you put your mind into it and have the right, mindset for that. So.
Yeah. And one last thing I'll say as we kind of finish is, my son is at 14, he bought his first rental property. And a lot of people ask me, they're like, how did he do it? How did he get a loan? And they're asking me all these hows. And I said, you're asking me the wrong questions. And they're like, what do you mean? I go, you should be asking me, why did he want to? Why did he come to me and say, Dad, I want to buy a rental property? I'm like, you're focused on the how. Don't worry about the how. That happens, right? You can, you get a good enough deal, you'll find the money for it, right? Why did he come to me and say that? That's what you should be asking me. And, and I think as entrepreneurs, sometimes we're very selfish people. And what I mean by that is we're so focused on educating ourselves and being the best we can be. We go to seminars, we read books, we podcast shows, we do all these things, but it stops there. How many people watching this show or that we know actually have alignments with their families, with their children, making sure, because how do we pass that down to them, right? Because if not, we're being selfish. We're taking all this information, we're committing all this time, right, away from family, friends, all this stuff, and it never leaves our brains, right? It never seeps through to the rest of the family. So all of a sudden, I give my son all my real estate assets. Me and my wife, pass away when it happens, and all of a sudden, he runs it into the ground. Why? Because we never took the time to educate him to want to do this. So I would say that, the one thing that I try to, tell people is if you have family, you should do some kind of alignment with your wife and children or significant other, at least once a year. Hey, this is where we're going. We're all in agreement. Like, are we all going to Disneyland together? Let's make sure we're on page. This is how much time it's going to take. This is how many hours it's going to take. And I think it would solve a lot less challenges where they're like, oh, Cesar went to another event. Now he's all crazy. Now he's doing this. Now he's doing that. Where if they're in alignment, they're like, okay, I get it. Like, I may not agree with it, but I understand what you're doing at least. And so I would say people watching this, try not to be greedy, try not to be selfish, educate the people around you and surround yourself, and everybody kind of elevates themselves.
Yep. Share the wealth, share the knowledge.
Share the wealth.
Yeah. Steven, it has been very, very, pleasant time to be with you. I enjoyed this podcast and all the information. You have so much knowledge, man. I mean, you're freaking smart, and I really appreciate your time being here, man. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me and the people that are listening to us,
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you so much. And I look forward to doing more. I'm sure you and I will be speaking together soon on some stages somewhere around the country.
Yeah, definitely. And for the rest of you, I will have Steven's information so you can actually connect with him, follow him. Make sure you get his book. This book is pretty awesome. And you need to connect with him on Facebook, Instagram, all that stuff. You can also follow me on Spreaker.com. I'm now on iTunes or Apple Tunes. I don't know what you call that. And you can also find me at www.CesarRespino.com. Till next time, have a wonderful day and enjoy the rest of your day.
Hi, I'm Cesar Espino, real estate investor, business coach, and consultant, and author of the book, You Can Overcome Anything, Even When the World Says No. My number is 424-501-6046. In my book, I talk about making the necessary changes to shift your mind for prosperity and certainty. Pick up your copy at Amazon. I also love helping families with their real estate and can purchase your house fast and all cash. Follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. My number is 424-501-6046.
Thank you for having me today. I am so glad you tuned in to this podcast. You can find me at Spreaker.com, where you can like and subscribe. And to learn more about myself and my services, you can find me at www.CesarRespino.com, or you can also find me at Facebook under Cesar R. Espino. Once again, thanks for joining me. I am looking forward to having you at the next episode, and know that you truly can overcome anything.